Good. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thanks for getting up early. Bill Hague, Executive Vice President at a company called Magid. We're a research-driven consumer insights consulting company. Live in Chicago, but I'm really honored to lead this panel. I'm really excited to have everybody up here. We have 40 minutes, and sometimes when you look at the clock, you think, gosh, 40 minutes, how are we going to fill it? It's going to go by in a minute. So we will have time for some questions at the end, so think about those at the end. So I'm just going to let everybody take 2 seconds, right, just introducing yourself, who you work for, what you do, and again, the theme of today's talk is the strength of local broadcast television. So Scott Warren.
Hi, I'm Scott Warren. I'm the president and general manager of KPIX and KPIX Plus right here in San Francisco, a CBS-owned and operated station.
I am Rob Folliard. I'm with Gray Media, Senior Vice President of Government Relations and Distribution.
Ann Shelley, I'm Managing Director of Pearl Television, a consortium of 8 of the larger broadcast station groups partnered with the networks rolling out NEXTGEN TV.
And I'm Ravi Kapoor. I run Major Market Broadcasting and Diya TV, which is a national television network focused on the South Asian community.
Awesome, thank you. So the vision of this panel, it's TV of tomorrow, but the T in this one could actually be today, because we're talking about broadcast television as it exists today, but also as it's going to exist in the future. And we're going to talk about 3.0, which Ann and others can chat about. The one thing that has stuck with me in the last couple of months, one of the most marketable Nielsen numbers that you hear now that they're releasing monthly is their gauge report, right? So they rank consumption of video on a television sets once a month, and it's by parent company. And what's interesting is if you look at the top 10, number 1 has been YouTube. So not necessarily by parent company, it's not by Google, but it's YouTube, not YouTube TV, but YouTube. And you kind of go down the list. But if you look at the top 10, there are some names that stand out. I mean, one is Weigel Broadcasting, not a name that anybody every day, but Weigel's like number 7. I live in Chicago. Weigel is headquartered in Chicago. They have a little TV station, WCIU, but they have a number of diginets, .2 kind of networks. So MeTV and all of these kind of old, Gunsmoke and the Dick Van Dyke Show and all those kinds of shows that most broadcast stations airing, they're number 7, right? Scripps, who has a bunch of diginets also, is number 9. So if you look at literally where the consumption of video is happening on television sets, right? So the big screen that everybody wants to own and the big investment in most homes, there's just a plethora of broadcast companies using free over-the-air broadcast signals to dominate that screen, and that's the way advertisers can get to it. And obviously, it can be monetized. So we're going to explore all of that, all the dimensions of that. But what I thought where we would start is just the whole notion of OTA, and the acronym is over the air, as 99.9% of the people in this room know. What's the trend? And we can start, Scott, you run the CBS O&O here in town. How do you look at OTA consumption, over the air, consumers, and where has it been, and because you've been general manager for how many years here?
3 years.
3 years, yeah. So how do you see it? Because we see it in our data as well.
Yeah, it's a smaller number every year. Most people are getting it through their cable system or IP streaming, and so we're seeing fewer and fewer. But there's a huge opportunity there, and because it's still free. And we need to take advantage of that. And I was just talking to all these smart people here about all the ways that we can take advantage of free in a number of new and different ways. At KPIX, the advantages of over-the-air free, first of all, we're hyper-local. So you can't get that anywhere else. We're live, and we're doubling down on things like live sports. and we're looking for that big screen experience. We've gone into AR, VR, and immersive experiences to try to grab people, bring them back to their big screen TVs. As you know, YouTube will tell you most people watching YouTube now are watching it on their big screen. So we're creating programming for that. Our job is to create all the compelling content, hyperlocal, live, big screen experience to drag people back to their TV sets and free television.
Rob, you work for one of the largest broadcast companies, non-owned and operated, all kinds of network affiliations. Now you just did a CBS renewal with everybody except Atlanta's moving. Scott just used the word free.
Yep.
Right? And most consumers' favorite four-letter word is free. And Ann and I have talked about this ad nauseum. If you want to get people to buy television sets, use antennas, if you could just explain that it is free, that would increase adoption. How does Gray look at marketing over the air as free?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an important segment. It is roughly 17% of the country uses an antenna to watch over-the-air television. So that's a big chunk of the country that we shouldn't be writing off or ignoring. Those are a lot of people. And look, not only that, we all know what's happening with cord cutting, with people who are subscription fatigue, who are cutting the cord. What we don't want is someone to cut the cord and then just use their Roku and watch Netflix. We need them to stay in our ecosystem. We need them to continue to watch. And, all right, sure, I would love them to pay Comcast $150 a month, but if you're not going to do that, I still want you to watch. I still want to get credit for you. I still want, the credit for the eyeballs to sell the advertising. So it is an important segment, and it's something that broadcasters really should focus on because, these people are there, they're watching our content, and frankly, if you have an antenna, you watch broadcast more. So we should be able to monetize you better because you're watching more hours, you're watching our content more.
Yeah, Ravi, as the station owner on this panel, right, so you own a station here, you own a number of stations across the country, primarily aimed at ethnic groups. Talk about that over-the-air consumer that you rely on.
It's interesting to have this conversation in 2025 because when we got started in 2009, we were right there as the digital TV transition was starting. And at that point, TV antenna adoption was down to about 8%. So virtually, a very small audience was watching over the air. But what digital did is it really gave us an opportunity to compete with cable and satellite and add more channels. And so our opportunity as an independent station, my first station was in San Jose, and we converted what was a Spanish Christian-focused analog TV station, because very big, robust audience there in analog TV for Spanish Christian programming. But we converted that to digital and kept some of that programming, but then launched a whole slew of channels, and we actually launched 20 channels at one time, 12 video, 8 audio, and I think early on some of the engineers were kind of insulting us to say, wow, are they running YouTube on television? Now, obviously in 2025, I'd love to be running the YouTube business. That would be awesome. But in 2009, that was really, they were taking a shot at our video quality because we were running standard definition. But what that allowed us to do is we put on the first local Vietnamese channel, 24/7 for San Jose. There's like 350,000, 400,000 Vietnamese in the South Bay. There are more than 500,000 Indian Americans and South Asians throughout the Bay Area. There's an enormous Chinese community, more than 1 million Chinese in the Bay Area. And so we launched a Chinese network, we launched a Taiwanese network, a Korean network, an African American network. And before you knew it, we had built the most diverse television station in American history. And the FCC allowed us to go to Channel 1, which probably wasn't, people weren't very happy that we got to the top of the dial, but, all of a sudden there's this TV station in the Bay Area with 20 channels with Channel 1 on the dial, and we got nominated as Television Station of the Year in 2010, just from that innovation of DTV. So I've seen it firsthand, the hyper-localism that's been discussed here, that CBS and all the big networks have done for many years. You can now drill down to all these communities, and we even saw it down in New York City the other night with the election, is that political candidate who won was targeting all these different immigrant communities that have been merged in New York City, targeting them. And we've seen that here in the Bay Area, where we have congressional candidates going to the Vietnamese Buddhist church to do interviews, because that's how hyperlocal their outreach needs to be if they want to win an election.
So you've invested in broadcast spectrum, right? So you've invested in these channels that are delivered via OTA as well as carried on cable. You haven't launched cable networks. What's the business plan in your head? What's the rationale behind going broadcast?
I mean, I would have loved to have cut deals with the big cable partner here in the Bay Area. I don't have to name them, but we have been largely blocked from the cable and satellite system. I'm just going to keep it real, and that's why I think streaming has been very, very impactful. Launching a YouTube channel, trying to cut deals. Unfortunately, our network, we have the largest Asian American network called Diya TV, which is focused on Indian Americans and South Asians, and we reach about 85 million people now nationally across 35 stations, and we have a little bit of carriage here and there, but TCL has launched us, Sling TV has launched us, we have a deal coming up with Vizio and other providers. So there's been a lot of Asian American content in particular that was locked out of the broadcast ecosystem for perhaps economic reasons. But if you see in Los Angeles, there are 200 channels over the air. I think that's one of the challenges we've had with this transition from 1.0 to 3.0, is that you have all these different robust channels, a dozen Armenian channels, 20 plus Spanish channels, 15, 20 Vietnamese channels in Los Angeles and here in the Bay Area. If you ignore those communities during this transition, that's going to be problematic. So I think that's actually very helpful for those of us that are focused on OTA, is that there actually is a very significant audience that wants to come along for the ride.
And you have an interesting vantage point as running the Pearl trade organization, right? All these folks are, except Ravi, members, and all the big broadcasters are members of your group. How do you look at the OTA, I mean, this foundationally, right? As a broadcast platform, and then moving from ATSC 1 to ATSC 3.
Right. So what I think that ATSC can do is really create exactly what's happening in fast channels, put it over the air. So for what Ravi's doing with his networks, he'll be able to do that more easily and launch more of them and create interactivity, but actually know who those consumers are, who those viewers are, and be able to have monetization models around advertising that don't exist in over the air. So right now you don't know exactly who those OTA viewers are. Here you can finally measure them because it's a connected television you're operating off of. The over the air side of it, as long as they're connected, can return all the data and create a wholly different environment. So I see it as sort of taking that over-the-air audience and finally mining them where they've never been monetized before.
Rob, the ability of a broadcast station, channel, to multicast, .2, .3, through compression, and you own DigiNets.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we've got
right?
ours as well.
Yeah, talk about that from the business standpoint as well as from the consumer viewer standpoint, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. First, starting from the business standpoint, one of the things I remember back 20 years ago as we were transitioning from analog to digital was this thought, and I think it was wrong, and it's been proven out, that why are we doing this? This is a waste of money to upgrade our technology from analog to digital. Nobody's going to make more money in digital than they did in analog. And especially in small markets, you'll never be able to pay off, the expense of building a second digital channel. That was dead wrong. Gray television, the amount of money we make off of multicasts, I think it was around $200 million last year in revenue off of our multicast channels. That's a huge chunk. And the idea that, our small markets couldn't afford to build out digital, the exact opposite. They wouldn't exist today if not for the multicast channels. The revenue that we get on those multicast channels, that supplements, the main station, the main ABC in a market like, say, Bowling Green, Kentucky. Well, on a multicast, we've got Fox and we've got a bunch of other DigiNets as well. And that additional revenue has made local news continue to be viable in small markets like Bowling Green, Kentucky, and small markets like North Platte, Nebraska. If not for multicasts, those stations couldn't afford to do local news. So it's been a lifesaver, just that upgrade in technology that we did 20 years ago. And I think, the upgrade in technology we're doing now, going from ATSC 1.0 to NEXTGEN ATSC 3.0, it's going to be the same thing. And you also hear some of the same complaints of, why are we doing this? Where's the ROI? How are we going to make money off of this? Look back 20 years ago, and you hear the same people were complaining about upgrading to digital. And then from a viewer perspective, I will say some of the most passionate viewers we have are the people who watch those multicast channels. My foolishly, my cell phone number is on the public inspection file for a lot of our television stations at the FCC's website. So anytime there is a lightning strike and, our station goes off the air for about an hour or two, my cell phone lights up of people who are trying to watch MeTV or the A-Team or, various Gunsmoke, old TV shows. The amount of passion that I get when, is mind-boggling. The people who are watching, I'll get a phone call at 10 p.m. from someone in the middle of Georgia, and I'm like, oh, God, here we go. Consumers watch it, consumers love it, and they get angry when it turns off because, Mother Nature intervenes.
Yes. Scott, how about you and Channel 5 here in San Francisco? How are you using the ability to multicast?
We have 4 or 5, maybe 5 or 6 at this point that we're using. I mean, it's just added revenue for us. And like you said, it helps us support the local news that we're doing.
Yeah. Advertisers engaging with it? I mean, ratings are not necessarily trackable and
not huge,
yeah.
but anything additive.
But they get it.
To the total budget, so we can do other things. Is good.
And Ravi, how are you able to expand what you do as a news provider, mostly, right? But you've got some DigiNets as well from Scripps and Sinclair, I know, on your station.
Right. I mean, so we were, in effect, kind of the pioneers of the space, launching 20 channels, 16 years ago. And so, when we launched, a lot of folks were like, who's going to watch this? First of all, we were given Channel 1. Second of all, how many people have the antennas? But truly, if you build it, they will come. Within a couple of years, what happened is we had one local Vietnamese channel, and then I had a partner at the time who was like, we probably shouldn't have a second one. We want the first one to thrive. And I said, well, actually, why don't we build a destination? Let the whole Vietnamese community in San Jose know that this station will have programming for this community, hyper-local. Guess what happened? We ended up with 7 local Vietnamese channels. Today, there are almost 20 here in the Bay Area on various television stations. This is also the case in Los Angeles. So I really do believe there's plenty of room in the ecosystem. If we have more sports programming, more classic programming, more ethnic programming, you name it, I think there's there's an appetite. You see it with the way social media works. The appetite is unquenchable, frankly, for content, especially if it's interesting and local. And I think we've seen that with broadcast.
Ann, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, just a couple things on the economics, just to Rob's point. It's about, $150,000 because most stations were repacked to upgrade to NEXTGEN TV. It's not a lot. So it's easy for broadcasters to actually implement it. So that's why our request for a transition by a flash cut in 2028 is very doable. It's not hard to build out NEXTGEN TV onto existing stations. And I think the other thing to point out is you could launch an infinite number of channels in NEXTGEN. And not that broadcasters want to create that environment, but you'll hear later this afternoon from some of the what we call broadcast IP channels or best channels, the ability for stations to just launch a URL. So this is an IP-based platform, right? A URL over the air, hits a server, brings in, can be anything, could be what's existing 100% on the CTV today, comes up, it pops up in the guide. The over-the-air guide. So, and it's 100% interactive digital channel. So there's really cool things broadcasters, and they could do pop-ups. So if there's a mayoral race and you want to cover it, you could pop up a channel for that. So there's all kinds of opportunities in NEXTGEN that just didn't exist before. So just wanted to make those 2 points.
No, that's good. Thank you. So I want to shift a little bit. We're talking about DigiNets, and we'll come back to 3.0, but I want to shift on the content side to sports. Everybody knows local stations are built on the NFL deal, local network affiliates, and their stocks go up and down as the NFL deal gets renewed or gets threatened to be challenged. Now, then you've got the regional sport networks, the RSNs, who went through some difficulty in the last couple of years, and local sports rights have been tossed up. A little bit of a jump ball to stay with the sports theme, and many of you have taken advantage of that. I know I saw Caitlin Clark was playing here against your Golden State Valkyries women WNBA last Thursday night.
And we won.
And you won. Yeah, you crushed. Yeah, she only made 1 3-pointer. She had a cold day. But talk about we get the economics of sports and the draw, right? But talk about from the team's aspect. I know you have a meeting with a baseball team that might be in this market later today. How do they see you as an outlet to promote their sport, their team, their people?
Yeah, we've got two examples with the Valkyries and the Giants, who we're talking to later today. Sports is in a weird place right now. There's a huge opportunity and there's a huge challenge. Under the RSN model, there was a ton of money for the sports teams. They were able to raise their salary caps. They were able to do all of the stuff and make their teams very expensive. But they were generating a lot of money through cable. I worked down at Spectrum in Los Angeles, where we had the Dodgers, the Lakers, and a news channel. And the news channel was built on, let's say, $1 per subscriber. The Dodgers Sportsnet was $40 per subscriber. And if you look at that across the thing, the rest of cable, Spectrum Cable, was subsidizing the cost of the Dodgers. The Dodgers, through the RSN, would make about $200 million a year. Their budget is $500 million a year. So as those numbers come down and people start clicking off and turning off the cable because maybe they weren't Giants fans and they didn't want to pay as much for that, they just wanted to watch whatever the History Channel, people, as we know, are cutting the cord. So that's left sports in a bind right now. And that's where the opportunity is for local broadcasters. The sports teams are all working on their own plans for streaming coming up in the next couple of years. Baseball has a really interesting debate that they're having on how their streaming service will work in 3 years. But for the next 3 years, they need to get there, as their RSNs are falling apart, they need to get their teams, their games out to people. And that's where we can step in, and that's where we are stepping in. But it's still expensive. They've still got that overhead, and we don't have the budgets to support that. So coming up with those interesting models that help the teams, that give them alternate revenue sources, and make it affordable for us is what we've done, and we just did that with the Valkyries. The Valkyries, an incredible organization owned by the Warriors. They've got a great team, a great management. They knew they had to come out and they needed to establish their brand. Obviously, women's basketball is seeing a great rise right now, but it still needed to have some socialization in the community. And that's where we came in and said, we can be your brand partner. We can tell your stories. We can make your players superheroes. We can get the whole community to know who you are, what you're all about. And then we went into the AR, VR world, and we gave them a presentation that nobody in sports can do. And and we used it to tell their stories. So to elevate their brand both visually, elevate their brand in the community through storytelling, we were able to strike a deal with them that lowered that cost of entry for us, but gave them lots of value. And it has been a fantastic experience. And that's what we're working on with others. Through the local broadcast and through our reach to the community, we're able to provide value to these guys that they couldn't get from somebody just writing a check for their rights.
And what's interesting, the case study I always think of is MLS, right? So men's soccer moved to Apple TV, went after, a boatload of dough. Their distribution has gone down because of it. It's limited. Their attendance across the league has gone down. Merchandising has gone down. So this notion of broadcasting versus narrowcasting for a content category like sports is really powerful. Rob, you're doing individual deals. You've done WNBA, NBA, NHL deals across the country. Do you want to talk just for a minute or so?
Yeah. So we've got a deal with the Phoenix Suns in Phoenix. We are the exclusive home of the Suns during the regular season. It's been a huge boon for the team. Before they were on our station, they were on the RSN. They might have been able to reach about 25% of the homes in the market, and that just killed them. And they went to us, and now all of a sudden they can reach everybody in the market. People who, huge Suns fans who either didn't want to pay for cable or a lot of times it gets tiered up. So instead of, being on the basic tier that every cable subscriber gets, you got to pay an extra $20 to get the regional sports network. So people are like, maybe I don't. So that their distribution on, the RSN is killing them. They're losing the casual fan, the person who just flips through. Whereas that's what we bring to them is all the casual eyeballs, the casual fans, the 100% distribution that no one else can bring them.
And the
teams love
relationship
it.
with advertisers
Yes.
as well, right? Yeah. Ravi, you and I haven't chatted about sports, but I don't want to leave you out of the conversation. Is there a sports play with your?
Actually, a couple of them. So when the Warriors launched their G League team, which was called the D League about a decade ago, we were the broadcast home of the Golden State D League team, which is called the Santa Cruz Warriors. Yeah. And we broadcast them on for a couple of years, and they cut a deal then with the RSN, but their viewership, I think, has been very limited on the RSN. And so I think, again, there's some innovative broadcasters that have partnered with local teams. And another station we have up in Fargo, North Dakota, we've got that as actually part of a whole swap, and we were left with just a license, the tallest tower in the country, and no programming. And so what did we do? We went to a local group who told me, you know what, we cover 20,000 cable subscribers outside of Bismarck, North Dakota, but we do local sports. I said, well, why don't we bring that to our brand new full-power TV station, give you full market access, and see if we can change the dichotomy in Fargo. What happened? We ended up launching multiple sports networks with Western North Dakota, Eastern North Dakota sports. They cover the rodeo. They cover all kinds of local genres. It's turned into 4 channels with hyper-local North Dakota flavored sports and news. A story that you could only tell because of multicast.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know NBC is a big partner of yours, and I don't know if they did anything around the Olympics, but just again, staying with this sports theme and tying it to 3.0.
Yeah, so they took the opportunity of the Olympics to launch their interactive television application on NEXTGEN TV, which they worked with the Olympic team to take some of the content that they were showing on their broadcast and on their internet, but bringing it into the over-the-air environment. And the attachment rate of consumers, they didn't advertise it. NBC's launched interactive and NEXTGEN and all of their O&Os. And what the reaction they saw in terms of attachment rates and usage was way more than they expected. And so they're seeing consumers actually, engaging. And so they're going to be doing the same for World Cup. Next year is a big year for NBCU. It's World Cup and a bunch of other things, but I don't want to speak so much for them. But they've really leaning in, experimenting, trying to re-envision the over-the-air environment for sports.
Awesome. I know we've got a minute or two left. I want to open it up. Anybody have any questions for anybody up here? Yeah, Matt.
Real quick for Scott, Robbie, and Rob, can you guys talk a little bit about how local news plays into the competition against FAST and AVOD and streaming in general? And then for Anna, can you talk a little bit about how NEXTGEN enables advanced monetization opportunities? Like, does it enable dynamic ad insertion or some of the other formats and technologies that we might see in streaming?
Yeah, I'll start on local news. Local news gets huge eyeballs, yeah. Oh, I'm
sure.
sorry.
Yeah, so Matt had a question about how local news for local stations help compete against streaming, FAST, AVOD, and then the question to Ann is more about 3.0 and still kind of along the same point, monetization question about that.
Yeah, I'll just say on local news, it gets huge eyeballs. The #1 rated show in television is supposedly The Five on Fox News, gets the most viewers every day. Well, we're in only 36% of the country. At 5 p.m., at the same time that The Five is running on Fox News, we've got local news on our stations. When you add up North Platte, Lincoln, Lafayette, New Orleans, all of our different markets, when you add that number up, it beats The Five. So when you aggregate the amount of people around the country, just on our stations, only in 36% of the country, not distributed like Fox News across the entire country, we do better than the highest rated show that's rated in TV. So local news gets more eyeballs than anything else that's out there, and people watch it.
Robbie?
I just want to point out, like, all the election coverage locally, nationally, and even internationally. One thing we've been able to do, because we have a kind of a South Asian-focused network, is we've created an election night special. And so we had Vice President Harris, who is half Indian, who ran for president in this last cycle. We've had, when she ran for Senate, we have 6 Indian Americans in Congress, and we have folks running at the local level. We were able to do a 3-hour election night special focused on all the different local, statewide, and national races all over the country, bring on candidates as they're sitting there in their war room trying to figure out if they're going to win or lose, and do that in real time. We've done that for many years now. I think that's, again, the power of being able to go live and local at the same time.
Yeah, Scott?
Yeah, we don't look at it so much as a competition. We're creating hyper-local content, and we're monetizing it in every single direction, and we're putting it out there on everything. It's not a crisis of distribution, for sure. We can get our stuff out to everyone. It's then how we sell that is the challenge that we face. But the content is for getting it out to all of the platforms.
All right, Ann, you're going to get the last word.
Yeah, so on the monetization front, anything you can do in digital, you can do in NEXTGEN. It's kind of that simple.
Which is a competitive advantage, right? Broadcast hasn't had that, right? The addressability, the zone cable. So now with 3.0,
The data,
you've got that.
knowing who's watching is going to be huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it gets back to this hyper-localism. So you can do hyper-local weather, hyper-local news on these applications. And again, you could drill even further. Ravi, I think, is going to have fun with NEXTGEN TV.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to it. But in terms of the platform is built to, and it's following all the standards that are happening in digital today. So, but it's still linear TV. So some of the challenges I think you heard yesterday exist regardless of it being NEXTGEN or not NEXTGEN.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you all, Scott, Rob, and Ravi. Thank you all.